God bless you all. Um, I'm going to start it off by saying I give God all the glory, I give God all the honor, and I give God all the praise because He is worthy. And I just want to start off by saying that because I'm going to share you a story um, that's going to glorify God, and also I pray that it helps reaches the lost or those struggling with certain issues in their spiritual walk. So here's my story, or a bits of it. I won't share full details, um, just because I don't feel that it's necessary. When I grew up in an abusive home, um, and from the age of 4, I was that's what I can remember, but I was sexually abused, and I had dreams a lot when I was a child too, and I would see a lot of things in the spirit realm, but I never understood it. Um, and I would have a lot of visions too. And I remember wanting to just sleep my whole day away because when I went to sleep, I would see things in my dreams that I just wanted to remain there. Um, and to me, it was like an escape from reality, that the reality that I was living in. Um, when I got around 7 years old, I remember my mother had to hire a babysitter to take care of me and my siblings. I have 2 brothers and a sister. And the sitter couldn't handle watching me. Everyone else was fine, but not me. I was around 7, and I tried to so many times. I remember her trying to drag me, but trying to commit suicide. I tried to jump out of the window. I hated my life. I hated the abuse that I lived in. I hated everyone who was around me. I hated my parents at a very young age. And especially when I tried to speak up about things that had happened to me by certain individuals and family members, uncles or whatnot, even teachers in school, things that had happened to me, I would be accused of lying. So I could never be able to express my emotions. It wasn't that type of place where I grew up that I could be able to do that. I couldn't talk about it. So it built up in such a young age, build up such anger inside of me. I really hated everyone. I was very cold. Um, okay, so I remember, and I had shared a video about this already, that I had an experience in hell when I was a child. I was around 6 years old, maybe 7, and it scared me. It scared me to the core. And my parents, when they would lock themselves in their room, there was no walking even around that room. You know, God only knows what they were doing. But you couldn't walk by their room, whether it would be during the day, the morning, the night. It didn't matter. When they were in their room, you had to get away. So I was banging on their door. Let me in, let me in. I had this scary dream. I know now that it was about hell, which if you want to, you can look at the other video so you can understand the full details. But anyway, I remember my grandmother sharing with me about that that dream, and all I could remember her saying was, well, that dream, you dreamt about a place called hell, and if you don't have Jesus, that's where you're going to end up going. So I was very curious about Jesus and wanting to learn, and I would try to get as much as I can out of her. Well, I do have a godfather that started taking me to church as I got a bit older. I don't really remember the age I started. I would say 8 or 9 years old is when I first started going. And when the moment I walked in these doors, it was, and I may get emotional sharing some of these things only because, not that there's any shame, I want to make that clear, but just how good God is and how much that He loved me and was there for me at such a young age and in my darkest times. I just can never forget where I came from, and can never forget how much God loves me and how much He fought for me. Um, so I have my tissue box here, just in case. But God, the moment I walked into these doors, I felt like loved, and I was the only. I feel like no, I wasn't the only, because I have my uncle and my cousin, but it wasn't your average typical Hispanic church. Let's just put it that way. It was a lot of elderly people, um, and I felt loved, and it was a really good feeling. I walked in these doors, and I felt peace, and it was the first time that I felt that way, and I always wanted to go. I was so looking forward to going. Maybe I was around 10, but it was an amazing, amazing time. So I had a hard time going to school. My mother would try to wake me up. I didn't want to go. I just didn't want to go. I really hated school. I was going through things, I was bullied in school, abused by teachers, sexually, and even some students. And it seemed like everywhere I would go, besides the church my godfather would take me to, I was abused everywhere, and I hated everybody. But then I would never be wanting to miss church. When Sunday came around, my uncle would come pick me up. I would literally be ready an hour before. I would sit there at the door with my Bible. My mom would even give me offering. She'd give me $1, and and she was saying, you have to always give, to be a giver. Now, my mother may not be perfect. There's been a lot of things, but the one thing I could remember is that she was a giver. Whether it be her alcohol or whatever, her that she had, she was a giver. Trying not to go into detail, okay? But she was a giver, and she taught me to give. So I would go to church, and I would be so excited to go. Well, because I was failing so much in school, because I really hated school, my mother was starting to question, what is it about this place that your uncle's taking you, that you just love it so much? Why are you you're always ready for on time to go, but you don't want to go to school or whatever? And so she took me out of church because I loved it too much. I don't understand that, but I hated her after that. I was so angry even more. So it was like, finally, somebody loves me. I'm learning about this awesome God, Jesus, and understanding dreams and visions that I have been seeing. So it really helped me understand that. And I was so focused in that, and I really didn't care about anything else because I was being hurt everywhere I went, including my home. So she took me out of church. She didn't want me going anymore. So I was mad. Later on in life, I found out certain things were coming to the air, and I was really angry about it. But at age of 14 years old, I had a boyfriend, and it was a serious relationship. When I was 14, I fell in love. He was a friend of mine, and he ended up being a boyfriend, and he was there for me, really, really there for me. I really thought I was madly in love. Anyway, my mother found out, and she kicked me out at 14. I remember because I skipped school, so she saw me. She, I guess, was off of work that day, and I skipped school that day, and I went to my house, and I was just hanging out in the yard or whatever. We were just talking, and she saw me, so she ended up throwing my dirty laundry at me, which was my undergarments she threw at me that were dirty from the hamper, and she says to get out of my house, and she kicked me out and left me with only that. So I didn't know where I was gonna go. She didn't want me back, and I ended up sneaking in my boyfriend's house at the time, and he snuck me in behind his parents' back, and then I would stay at a friend's house sleeping over, so I would kind of like bounce around. And then I remember trying to come back and sneak back to try to get some clothing from my mom's house. And there was times that she was there and she would not want me around to go and get my stuff. And so I kind of got clothes from friends and things like that. And then I started uh, doing hair on people, like cornrows. I would do cornrows to try to make some money to buy belongings. And I became really depressed. I was already smoking weed and drinking at the time. So that helped me with the depression. And um, then my boyfriend's parents at the time, they just said, well, you know what, you could stay with me. They realized the circumstances that I was in. So then I decided I didn't want to go to school, and so on and so on. I basically have, I went to ninth grade, but I kept, repeating ninth grade. I started failing seventh grade. I failed eighth grade, and basically I was paid summer school to be able to go to the next grade. So educationally speaking, I literally have a sixth grade education because I didn't really learn anything. Okay, moving along a little bit here. When I lived there at my boyfriend's house, or my boyfriend's house at the time, I did a lot of drugs. I didn't care about anything anymore. Things started becoming, things were being exposed to me as my parents and how they grew up, that I started realizing that, they were doing drugs. And I just became angry because they would talk so much about certain individuals in my family because they were doing drugs, but really it was them. So I thought they were hypocrites, and I really hated them. So I was like, well, you know what? They ended up doing that way, and my dad didn't really have an education. I was like, I'm gonna be fine. So I started doing, drugs too, and I was really hurt because I've always wanted a relationship with my mom. And so anyway, I lived from 14 to 17 with my boyfriend, and then I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend, and I remember walking and moved in with my parents at 17 back again, and I haven't seen them in years, and I was doing anything that I wanted. I lived the life of any teenager's dream that is in the world, okay? And I moved back, and I had a deep conversation with my dad, and I said, I was just letting everything out. I'm still full of anger, but I was sober, so everything ends up coming out. And I told my dad, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. I went down a huge list, and I said, why didn't you do anything to help me? I can't let this go, because I just moved back to my parents' house, and my dad was going to send me off to New Jersey, and I'm from Pennsylvania. He was going to send me off to New Jersey to Job Corps, and I'm like, I just came back. And then I just started releasing a huge list to him that all these things had happened to me, and I'm just asking him, why? Why do you permit these things to happen to me? And why wasn't there any justice done? I can't stand this anymore. I literally have told him to his face that I hate him, and he was very sad. And he didn't know half of the stuff that had happened to me, because I had tried for so long to tell my mom. And so when I told my dad, I felt like peace. He gave me a hug, he cried with me, and it felt really good. Anyway, the next day I ended up coming home from work, because I was working full-time at that time. I already had like a card that even though I was underage, I can work full-time because I was out of school. I dropped out at 14. And I ended up coming home, and my mother immediately saw me and started throwing dirty laundry at me again. And she says, you're trying to destroy my marriage. Everything that you told your dad was a lie. And I was so hurt. She kicked me out again. And I was dating this guy at the time. And he was a lot older than me. He was 22, and I was 17. And I was kind of with him at the beginning because he was old enough to buy me alcohol. So I thought, woohoo, free ride. Crazy. And so I ended up not having a place to stay. I slept in his truck a few times to be able to have a place to sleep at, because my mother had kicked me out, accused me of lying, and or whatever. Things really became downhill. I started living in an abandoned home, started doing more drugs. Basically, anything that you throw at me, I would do. But there was one thing I didn't do, which was to shoot up. I didn't do that. But anything else you threw at me, I would do it because I just wanted to numb all the pain that I was going through. Like I said, I'm not going into details about a lot of other things too. But at the age, I'm going to move on because at the age of 19 years old, the same person that I was with at 17, I ended up finding out that I was pregnant at 19 years old. And at that time, I was not in the right state of mind to care for a child. I couldn't control my addictions. I didn't even have my own place. I was staying with someone. And I tried to remain sober for a day, and that was hard. And I decided that I was going to choose drugs over having a baby. And I did. I went through with it. And when I went through with the abortion, I felt like a walking demon. I felt cold. I then got worse after that abortion, and I was partying. And I was everywhere. If I can get in a bar or a club, I would get in. I would dress up however I had to, do what I had to without going into detail, to get in certain places and do what I wanted to do. I didn't care anymore. I became suicidal. I tried so many, there were so many attempts of overdosing. I just hated myself and everyone around me. And, you know, I really hated everything. But I smiled, but I really wasn't happy. I'm moving on. I'm trying to be quick here. I don't want to go into detail. When I was 20 years old, I was about to be turning 21. My birthday's Christmas Eve. So I was going to be turning 21 on Christmas Eve. And I didn't have a place to stay. It was the holidays, Christmas. And I was depressed. And I was kind of bouncing around looking for whoever I could stay with. A guy, girl, whatever, it didn't matter. Just somebody let me in their home. But also where I could be able to continue my habit. That was my main thing. I didn't want to get kicked out because of my habit. I wanted to move in places where I could be able to continue with my habit, because it was what kept me sane, or as I thought. Anyway, I moved into a mess because I didn't realize at the time my parents were getting a divorce. And when I did, I realized, well, my time here is limited to stay at my parents' house. They let me in one last time. My mother let me in one last time, but only because she wanted money from me to move in and to collect so she could move out. And I was at my lowest. Okay, I was so blasted every night, every morning. I couldn't be without anything. And there was one night that I came home, and I cried out. And I remember, like, vomiting in the toilet. And I remember throwing up and, like, crying out and just really, like, wanting help. Like, God, help me. God, like, please. Like, and then thinking to myself that, if he's real, like, I need him to do something now. And I don't want to go to hell. Like, even though I lived the life that I lived, I still remember that dream of hell and that experience. And I knew that it was real because I felt it. And I felt like the demons that I saw, I felt like they were inside of me when I was doing drugs. And there's maybe in some time I can go into detail on the drugs, that it's really demons, and the hallucinations and everything that I saw was truly the dark spiritual world that I was walking with and doing some stupid witchcraft back in my day, just to, I don't know, just stupid stuff that I did. And literally walking with the darkness and being there anyway. But I remember like saying, you know, if you're really there, you gotta do something. And I was at my wit's end. Like I had nowhere else to go. I was gonna get kicked out again. And this time I had used too many people and abused too many people and living in their homes, that no one at this time was gonna take me in. Nobody wanted me. And so I was really down. I had nowhere else to go. And being in an abusive relationship with, you know, boyfriends of mine, it was hard. So it was a week later. It was after that cry out that I've done. It was a week later that I found out that I was pregnant. And I knew that that was God. I knew that He answered my prayers, because I never confessed it with my mouth and said it out loud, but I've always told myself since a young child that I didn't want to be like my mom. I don't want to make the same mistakes that she's done, and I absolutely do not want to make that same mistake again in choosing drugs over a child. And I knew that this was God to give me another chance again to be a mom. So I did. And I thanked Him, and I surrendered to Jesus, and He delivered me completely. He didn't allow me to go through withdrawal during my pregnancy. He watched over me. He truly protected me. I was abused and raped during my pregnancy, and I really went through hard things to try to make right moves, and not really truly understanding where to turn to. But I did know that it was God that was with me, that He protected me and not go withdraw. Because one of the most scariest things for an addict to go through is to try to turn themselves to be clean. Because of the withdrawal, it's a scary thing. But He delivered me. He didn't allow me to go through that. And I forever thank Him for that. Watched over my baby. He was there for me. And I remained by myself. I still was able to stay at my parents' house with my daughter. And I would read my Bible at home all the time. And I would pray, and I would watch Christian Network on TV. And I changed my life around. I decided to turn to God because I realized that He gave me grace and mercy. And I didn't want to blow it, because I thought to myself, if I do it, I'm really going to hell. If I mess this up this time, I'm really going to hell. And how could He give me another child after what I've done? So I did. I started reading my Bible, and starting to do what I can live right. No drugs, no nothing. No men in my life, nothing. And that's my testimony. And I ended up going through some hard times with my daughter's dad. He tried to take her from me, but you know, and I met my husband, and my husband was there for me and helped me with everything. But that's basically what I want to share. And I want to encourage you that if you're struggling with any drugs, if you're struggling with addiction, and you are afraid to go through rehab because of the withdrawal, there are different organizations and establishments that will help you go through that, and they'll give you a little bit of drugs to wind you down from it. But it's just not enough that your body's used to. But God is our deliverer. He is the one that we can turn to. I'm just going to get my Bible. One second. God is the one who will deliver us. He's always watching out for us, just like what he did with me. He knew my heart, he knew my thoughts and my minds, even when I didn't speak them out, and he was there for me and gave me another chance to make things right and delivered me from, from that. It says here in Deuteronomy chapter 1 verse 30, the Lord your God which goeth before you, he shall fight for you according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. And then 2 Thessalonians, but the Lord is faithful, who shall establish you and keep you from evil. We have a faithful God. God is with us. And Psalm 61:3, for thou hast been a shelter for me and a strong tower from thy enemy. 1 Samuel 2:9, he will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for by strength shall no man prevail. God is with us all the time, and he'll never forsake us. And no matter what situation that you're in, he's going to deliver you. He is our deliverer. He is a good God. And if he did that for me, I know he can do that for you. But you've got to lift your voice out and lift your hands up and surrender to Jesus and trust in him, because he's the way out. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man can come unto me. No man can go to the Father except through me. Jesus is the way. You shout upon and call upon the name of Jesus and you will be delivered. He did it for me. I know he can do it for you. And not only that, he's a God of second chances. Okay? He knew what I did. Alright? But he still was loving and kind enough to give me another chance to make things right and to be the mom that he wanted me to be, that I was called to be, and gave me another baby. And I can't thank him enough for his love, his grace over my life. And he's such a good God. And when I go to heaven one day, I will see my son. I really hope this encourages you, and that you were able to understand what I'm trying to get at. Because I am a bit emotional when I talk about it. Because he's great. God is good. And I give him all glory, honor, and praise. No matter what you're going through, he's there for you. He never wants to harm you. He wants to be there for you because he has a plan for you. And he will deliver you from evil. And you have to trust God and believe him. And know that he's the way out. Know that Jesus is the way out. And for those of you who are messing around with witchcraft, it's not a game. There is a real hell. And it's not a game, doing spells on people and all that, because it's only going to backfire on you. And if you mess with a man or woman of God, over someone who is a born again Christian, you mess around with the man or woman of God and you try to do spells, it's going to be like a boomerang and it's going to go right back to you. How I know? Because I lived it, and I've got to see it with my very own eyes and feel it. It's a boomerang, and it's going to come right back to you, and it's going to come back to you stronger, because as hard as you threw it, it's going to come even harder at you. You don't mess around with that. If you mess around with fire, you're going to get burned. So I'm sharing that with you. Turn to Jesus. He's the way out. He will deliver you, and he has plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And I really hope by me sharing a story of mine that you're blessed by it. And if you're even a believer and you have confessed that you are a sinner and you've surrendered to Jesus, and maybe you have something inside of you that you're ashamed of sharing, because I can be honest with you. Yes, there was a time where I was ashamed of sharing that I aborted a child, that I committed murder, because that's what it is. I committed murder. Yes, I did go through a time where I was ashamed. But to be ashamed is to be dead in Christ. And I'm not ashamed, because through this story, I can glorify God and show how good God is, that he gave me another chance to do things right. And so if you have something that you're ashamed of, I'm telling you, pray about it, share it with people, ask God for discernment, and share it to glorify God. Because in everything that we do, we're supposed to do it to glorify God. Everything that we say, it's supposed to glorify God, because we are human beings that were created to worship our Heavenly Father. That's what we were created for. So everything that we have to do and everything that we say needs to glorify God. So my story glorifies God, because if it wasn't for him, where would I be? I would be in hell right now. I would be burning in the place that he showed me. And I'm telling you, hell is real and you don't want to go there. Jesus will deliver you from it. If you're afraid to go to a rehab, I'm telling you, go on your knees and start praying, because God is going to deliver you. The Jesus is Lord, and he is there for you. He wants to deliver you. Trust in him. He's going to take you out of that feeling of that you're going to die. But you are, in a sense, spiritually, you're going to die for him and become a new creation. That's all I'm going to share. And I hope that you're blessed, and that you take this story and let it be a blessing to you. And that if you have doubted that Jesus can be there for you, if he was there for me, he can be there for you. God bless you all. And I hope you have a wonderful and righteous day. And just trust God. Trust God. And if God is for you, who can be against you? God bless you.